Welcome back to another show, as we like to call it, the Beth and Ray Show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about chronic disease.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's start with the official definition of chronic disease given to us by Centers for Disease Control, or otherwise known as the CDC. And this is their definition here. They are defined, chronic diseases are defined as conditions that last 1 year or more and require ongoing medical attention or limit activities of daily living or both.
Okay.
Just a few stats about chronic diseases before we get into this. This is an infographic given to us by the CDC. There are 6 in 10 adults in the U.S. have a chronic disease. 4 in 10 have 2 or more. This is the leading cause of death and disability. Excuse me, and the leading driver of a lot of money spent in annual health care costs.
Yes.
$4.1 trillion, and I just looked this infographic up just yesterday or day before to make sure it was up to date.
Still correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty mind-blowing, actually,
Yeah,
to even wrap your brain around that number.
right.
Yeah.
You may be wondering, in terms of health coaching, what are you responsible for in terms of chronic diseases, and what do you need to know about chronic diseases? And these are the competencies right here that you're responsible for. You definitely need to be able to identify the risk factors. You need to understand the biometric standards, the health screening procedures. You need to know basic information regarding prevention, behavioral treatment, and recognizing imminent medical danger.
Yes. So again, we're not really here to diagnose anything, and we
Absolutely.
legally can't diagnose anything. However, we do need to be aware of what is normal, what is outside of normal, and what are some of the common treatment protocols that can be implemented to help with this.
And all of this information is, we stick to basically the CDC standards and definitions. So
Yes.
if you're ever curious and want to do some of your own research, the CDC website's a great place to go. And we have that as the very last slide, I think. This is going to be a two-part episode because this is a long
This is a long
chronic disease, long. These are the most common chronic diseases according to the CDC. You see these here: heart disease, stroke, diabetes, cancer, obesity, and arthritis. I find it interesting that they list obesity when it really is kind of a precursor to a lot of these others, but it has made the list.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's interesting too, because I think the definition of obesity changes too. The more we learn about it, and really, it is such a multifaceted disease that it is interesting, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes in terms of how it's defined.
Yes. The key lifestyle risk, again, this is from the CDC infographic. They've got tons of infographics as a coach you can use if you need to. But this is another one of theirs. Tobacco use, poor nutrition, physical inactivity, excessive alcohol use, and you're going to see these again and again throughout this presentation. We're going to get sick of saying them.
Yes, yes, you will. So it is important to know them, though. And the CDC website is a great reference when you're studying for the exam, because, again, all of the information that they are pulling for, the standards they are using, it's all coming from the CDC.
Yes. Yes, one important thing to know before we dig into chronic diseases is that we've now discovered, or still discovering, research is showing us that there's a common factor in most chronic diseases, and that is inflammation. And chronic inflammation versus acute inflammation, where acute inflammation is like what's going on with my thumb when you slam it in the door. That is beneficial to healing, and you want your thumb to be a little bigger than the other thumb because it's doing its job.
And she doesn't even need a pedicure. I mean, a manicure. She already has her Halloween.
I've got my one black.
Her Halloween paint job is already in effect. It's gorgeous.
And the sad part is this is over a month old now. Anyway, this is helpful inflammation. Chronic inflammation, not helpful, causes problems over time. And there is a test now that's being used, C-reactive protein test it's called, that can measure inflammation markers. So I think that's like a blood test, isn't it?
It is a blood test, yes. And it's It's pretty common. I think it's on most. I know my CRP is tested every time.
Yeah.
I've asked for it, so I don't know if now it's just part of my panel. I think, though, it is becoming a very common test that it may even be just.
No, I still have to ask for it to get it. Yeah, and it costs me a little extra.
Oh, really?
But that might just be, we live in different towns.
Oh,
so
maybe. Because it's part of my panel.
Okay. Well, that's great.
And maybe it's just that's what my GP, she just automatically orders it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Lab tests can vary widely from office to office.
Yeah,
Sure. I've noticed in just seeing clients who send me their blood tests, and I'm like, hey, where's your A1C?
But it's a telling, my father had an autoimmune, this eye thing going on. And it was very interesting to see his CRP was the basic measurement that we were following.
Oh, wow.
And when it first happened, it was off the charts. And you could see as it got better and prednisone's the treatment, it would go down. And then when they took him off the prednisone, it shot right back up. And so it was really this test that we were monitoring to how much prednisone do we need? When can we start tapering? So it really is a good marker when you've got some of those, particularly autoimmune things that are going on, that it's a little hard to wrap your brain around. How are we going to see what's going on? And this CRP was it was really fascinating to see.
I didn't know that. That is fascinating. You could watch the health of his eye, basically.
Oh, yeah. It was, it's a common autoimmune in people over 70, and it's just this unilateral, it affects the artery of the eye.
Oh, wow.
And you just have this inflammation in the artery. And you can lose your vision if you don't catch it. And, fortunately his neurologist was right on it. And so once that prednisone kicked in, it, just shot right back down. And then,
I didn't even know what this test was until a client sent me their test results and specifically wanted me to look at that because inflammation was what their doctor was saying. You need to work on, you have chronic inflammation and you need to work on getting it down. And I was like, I don't even know what C-reactive. I had to go look it up, do some research on it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I do think we're getting wiser in using it.
Yeah.
Because now we know so much about inflammation.
Well, yeah, I was reading the other day and it was saying that they use this sometimes for rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, really?
C-reactive protein
which
has
makes
been
sense.
a test.
It's inflammation. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is interesting. So, there we have it, folks. Send us all your information on CRP that you found fascinating.
The first squirrel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Slide number 2.
So we're like slide 3.
66.
Maybe this becomes 3-part chronic disease.
Maybe. We'll see. Other things to look for in terms of chronic disease is the metabolic syndrome. I think this was created, I want to say in the 70s, if I remember correctly, originally. Anyway, this is a NIH guideline. They define the metabolic syndrome as having 3 or more of these 5 traits that you see here on the slides. A large waistline, a high triglyceride level, a reduced HDL cholesterol, an increased blood pressure, or an elevated fasting blood sugar. So any 3 of those 5 then classifies as metabolic syndrome. And what I was reading was that it was created so that physicians could quickly let somebody know they are headed towards a chronic disease without having to have a whole bunch of blood tests and MRIs and x-rays and all these really expensive tests. And so it was a much easier way to say. And the guidelines here are for a waistline, it's 35 inches or larger for women, 40 inches or larger for men, a triglyceride level of 150 milligrams per deciliter or higher, an HDL that's less than 40 for men, less than 50 for women, blood pressure that's 130 over 85 or higher, and an elevated fasting blood sugar of 100 or more.
And know these values. And we'll talk a little more about these values as we go along, dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
However, know these values. And again, it'll be a situational type question. the way they pose it. So it's not just going to be like, what are,
Right.
what ties into metabolic syndrome. It's going to be this whole scenario, and then you just need to know these 5 things and know what makes it normal to know which answer would be correct or incorrect.
Yes. Exactly. All right, we're going to dig into really all these 5 and more. And let's start with the large waistline section, I guess you'd say. And that is obesity. This is a map that I just grabbed. You can see it's 2022. It's the most recent behavioral risk factor surveillance system. It's a survey, it's a phone survey that the CDC does, and just asks people to self-report. We also know when people self-report, particularly when it comes to weight and that sort of thing, they tend to under-report. And so you can bet on these numbers being lower than they actually are.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is the latest maps, and you can see here the greens are, the lower ones, and as you get deeper red into the wine color, I guess you'd say, are higher levels of obesity. So you can pick out your home state there and kind of see where you stand. And where I used to work at UNC, we would do these obesity maps, and it was for the globe. We had access to the data for the whole entire globe, all the countries, and we would compare 1960s obesity data, and one of our graphic designers put it into like an active map. I wish I could have gotten a hold of it, although I don't know how it would have shown in a PowerPoint slide. But anyway, you can see the colors over time changing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and turning into these dark reds where they started out like, clear or near zero or whatever. And you can also see in some countries, they're still really low. Some countries that are still struggling with the opposite issue of real food scarcity still. Yeah, it's very interesting. Anyway, that was an aside. I squirreled. But this is the state of obesity currently in the U.S.
It's telling, right? That the entire country is predominantly orange.
Yeah, orange into red, and that is 35 to 45% of adults.
Yeah.
Obesity. This is not just overweight. This is obesity.
Right.
Which,
this is telling. There is, I need to look it up. I want to say that it's called State of Our Nation.
I think that is the name.
Is that the name of it?
I think that's the name of it too.
And you can go in and you can click your state, and it gives you all sorts of, so they do a report every so often on obesity, and you can break it down by gender, you can break it down by age, so like you can even see, what does our pediatric population look like? It's a really fascinating website with a lot of good information. Certainly not anything that's pertinent to what you would need to know for the exam, but super fascinating to go through and see the breakdown and to compare state to state to see.
Yeah, and I don't think they ask obesity rates at all on the exam.
I don't think they do at all. No, it's more just in metabolic syndrome is where obesity comes up. Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, it's pretty telling though. Yeah, it is.
Obesity definition is, and overweight as well, is a chronic disease when the weight is higher than what is considered healthy for a given height. And it is a complex result of a combination of factors, and we're going to talk a little bit about each of these factors. So behavioral, social determinants of health, genetics, illness, and medication. Let's go for behavior first. So when we say behavior, what we're talking about is, as I said, you're going to hear these again and again, a poor diet and physical inactivity. I think we generally all know both of those can lead to obesity. I think the one that surprises people sometimes is the insufficient sleep. And I saw a little video, I don't know where it was, on YouTube or somewhere sometime back. The way we lose body fat, literally when you lose body fat, and the way body fat leaves the body is predominantly through breathing. When fat is used as a fuel, it turns it into our CO, what is it, carbon dioxide? Yes, that we breathe out.
Our V8.
Yes, so we literally breathe out our body fat, and that's how we get rid of it. And a large portion of that happens while we're sleeping.
That's crazy.
And you might think, oh, well, maybe I'll just sit around and huff and puff.
I was gonna say we're gonna be doing HIIT 3 times a day.
Maybe I'll just make myself voluntarily huff and puff and I can lose more weight. But they have actually tested that and it doesn't work.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That is interesting.
It actually has to be from real movement, real sleep, your body processing, all of that. So anyway, so insufficient sleep is one reason why people will become obese.
Yeah.
Chronic insufficient sleep. And I put a couple of things here. I forget I think these came from the Why We Sleep book. Yeah, you remember seeing these as well. In that, it's a research-based book. So these are research tested and discovered things that I have here as bullet points. Our leptin, which is a hormone, our leptin and our ghrelin are two hormones that control how hungry we are and when we feel full. Ghrelin is the one that makes us feel hungry, and leptin is the one that makes us feel satisfied or satiated, or sometimes overly full when we eat too much. But when people have insufficient sleep, and this showed up in just a few nights of not sleeping well, leptin drops 18% and ghrelin went up 28%. So it's almost like a double whammy. You're feeling more hungry and it's
Less
harder,
satisfied.
and less satisfied when you don't sleep as well. Another thing that happens when you don't sleep well is your body, you're alert more. So your body is just going to crave more carbs because your brain fuel is glucose or carbs. And so you're just going to crave more.
When you're
And
tired, your body's telling you, I'm going to need more energy.
I need more energy, so get me some more
The
fuel.
fastest way to do that is through glucose.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
M&Ms. That's
Yes.
the. I think that's the fastest fuel source, or a Pepsi with sugar in it, and just straight up watered down, already processed for you. Yeah, we're not recommending you eat either of those. I'm just saying that's the fastest way. So that's your brain starts craving that stuff when you don't sleep as well, and also. The same studies were showing that your prefrontal cortex, which is up here, which is your self-control mechanism, your good decision-making part of your brain, is less active when you sleep poorly. And your amygdala, which is sitting on top of your brainstem in the center, is more active. And that's your fight or flight, like, let me survive. I don't need to make a good decision. I just need to live.
Yeah.
And so it's when you sleep, the opposite of what you want your brain to be doing is what's happening.
Yeah, it's the perfect storm.
It's the perfect storm.
Yeah. And the behavior part is actually where we as health coaches step in.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is the part that we can control. And so as a health coach, this is the part that we get to be a part of.
Good point. I'm glad you said that, because there are other factors that we don't control at all.
Right, exactly.
And some of them, the clients won't control
Yeah.
or can't.
And when you look at the breakdown, though, and I think we have a slide on it, don't we, of how much behavior affects us? Did we keep that slide in?
Ooh, but it's in the other. I didn't put it. I meant to put it in this one, but as you're saying that, I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll add
It's
it
more
back
than
in.
50%. I
It
will
is.
say that.
Lifestyle is over 50% of what's in our control. Because we do like to blame our genes.
We like to blame our genes.
Oh, it's just my genes. There's nothing I can do about it. And
I think that's less than 20%. That's like 17,
16.
16.
16%.
Yeah. Our memories are still pretty good.
I know. Look at us.
Yeah.
So again, as health coaches, we get to be a part of the biggest part that is controllable. I mean, we know that over 50% of our lifestyle choices are what's leading to the potential for this chronic disease. And so that's where health coaches are so powerful, because we can step in and, okay, well, what can we change? Okay, well, we can change over close to 60% of my predisposition to this. So, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Social determinants of health, or SDOH. This is several components, and there probably is way more than listed here, but just to give you an idea of a few. Movement access, like where a person lives. You may not have, like where I live in a townhouse, and in order to really walk, I have to cross a 4-lane highway. I do it, but every time I do it, I think, is it really worth risking my life? And most of the people who live in my townhouse don't. There's not really sidewalks. There's not really trails there. So, and people live in places where you don't have access to things like parks or playgrounds for kids or adults to move. And also there's policies that determine community design. And sometimes where you live, the policies are just not in place, and to put them in place would be near impossible. Also, other social determinants of health is food access, and I'm talking about healthy food. Access to some food, such as packaged goods and highly processed foods, might be readily available, and grocery stores where you can buy actually whole foods, that sort of thing, none. And I think I spelled desert wrong.
There are not two S's in there.
It should say food deserts, not food desserts.
Food desserts.
I know, that's embarrassing. So let me just call it out because I see you're probably reading it right now. It should
We will go and change that.
Yes, should be food deserts. And that's, again, where there's no access really to healthy foods. Also school food choices. And that's driven by each district, I think.
Well, to some degree, it's driven by state.
Okay.
And so the state has requirements of what our food has to look like. Yet here in North Carolina, so everything has to have whole wheat in it. However, the percentage of whole wheat is kind of non-existent.
Okay.
So there are regulations. However, you are still allowed to sell a la carte anything. The ice cream, the Doritos, the whatever. But if it's on the plate, there are regulations that they have to fall under. Yet you have the ability to we vendor out just because the regulations are just so nuanced that it's too hard. Being as small of a district as Ashburn City Schools is, we actually contract out with a food person that does all the calculations. Yet they can still sell the Doritos and the ice cream and the whatevers, as long as it's underneath their contract. And then like the candy bars and that sort of stuff, fundraisers outside of school, you can't do it on school property. So there's laws, but we could be better.
Lots of loopholes. Yeah, I think you mentioned some whole wheat Pop-Tarts.
Yes, we have whole wheat Pop-Tarts. We have whole wheat muffins. It's interesting. And, we do have our packets of apples. As long as you have something with something, then it can count. Yet no one eats the apples. It's crazy. The amount of food that you even throw away will make you sick. So that's for another day.
Well,
however, yes, our legislators are a big part of what we're feeding our kids in school.
Yeah, these are all determinants of health, though, because the kids are there and make their choices. And And the lobbyists are real to even get the whole wheat out. I mean, like, there is a whole group that is angry that we have to have even a percentage of whole wheat in our foods because they are saying the kids aren't eating it. And we can't send our kids home hungry. Oh, wow.
And it's like, we're giving them whole wheat Pop-Tarts, guys.
Yeah.
We might could do better in the other direction. However, lobbyists will be lobbyists.
Yeah. Also, the affordability of foods, another determinant of health, because sometimes the whole foods and the healthy foods are there, but they're just not affordable.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me that it costs more to eat healthy than to grab a box of Fruit Loops or something.
Right. Yeah. However, I will say, as the health coach, it can be helpful on our part to enlighten our clients to, hey, what do you know about frozen vegetables? What do you know about frozen fruits? Because I do think the media wants us to think, particularly the post commercials and that, it's so expensive. Yet if you look at a bag of frozen spinach, it's less than $1 in the Walmart here in Ashboro.
Yes.
So it can be a misconception too.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the studies I was a part of at UNC was they were doing I think it was the DASH diet. Was it the DASH diet? I can't remember now. I may be getting it wrong. But the study was looking at how a person could use frozen vegetables and canned vegetables even with low sodium or no sodium added. And could it really be done? And what was the affordability of it?
Yeah.
And it was a lot better than you actually thought.
I think Mark Hyman has one of his books. He actually went and had a breakdown, and there are actually foods that are cheaper. And so he goes through that breakdown of, hey, you actually can eat real food because if you look at a box of like Cheez-Its right now,
I know that food has really gone
Oh,
up.
it's
since the
expensive. It's
pandemic.
expensive versus, just buying the real thing.
Yeah.
So I do think that we can be helpful in enlightening our clients to kind of getting through some of those misconceptions of, well, I'm never going to be able to eat healthy. It's too expensive.
Yes, and one good thing to know about, especially frozen fruits and vegetables, they're frozen at the peak of ripeness. The reason they're chosen to be frozen is because they won't make it on a truck somewhere, because they're at the peak. And so you really do get the ripest, which I like because, I have a sweet tooth, so I'm loving my frozen fruit especially.
Yes. Yes. So it's doable.
Yeah.
However, when you go out in some places, it is going to be more expensive.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. And you don't know when you're talking to your client nowadays we have clients from all over. You don't really know what they're facing in the area where they live.
Right.
You may learn that as you talk to them, but anyway.
Yeah.
The other one I wanted to mention was obesogens, and these are just chemicals that disrupt the normal endocrine function that changes the way our bodies make, store, and use fat. And this is something, this is recent knowledge for me. I think you knew more about it because you put me on to that book.
The Obesogen Effect. I was just curious to say, The Obesogen Effect. It is a phenomenal book if you're interested in reading about just some of the recent research around obesogens and what they're discovering and how it really can impact our endocrine function and just, wreak havoc on our, metabolic systems.
There's some stories of people who, once they were able to rid themselves of these toxins, basically, they lost weight.
Yeah.
When they couldn't before, the things they were trying before. So it was quite amazing. And then I'm not saying, it would work for everybody, but for some people, this might be what's going on with them.
Absolutely.
I think it also really helped me I think there's a lot of judgment around obesity in our country, and which really breaks my heart. My mom was obese, and I saw how people treated her, and it just infuriated me, and it makes me appreciate more information coming out about what causes obesity, and it's not just you
eating less and moving more.
Right, there's more to it than
so
that.
much more to the story.
Yes, so it can help remove some shame around it and some judgment around it if more knowledge is out there. So
I actually had a client and she said in our first session when we were just kind of connecting and getting to know each other, she said, I'm just tired of doctors telling me to eat less. That was her comment. And I thought, how sad. That's been her every time, that's just been her experience. Is that we just need to eat less. And, it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It is. There is true discrimination out there. And again, what an opportunity for health coaches to really be able to spread the word. Like, hey guys, this is multifaceted. This is not just about go run a couple miles today.
Right.
So much more to the story.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That was.
I was like, I feel like I had something else to add to that, but I don't think I do.
Well,
I'll think of it at high blood pressure. We'll circle back.
Let's circle back, whatever. Yeah, I could talk all day on that, but I know it's driven by.
Oh, I was just going to say in the gut biome.
Oh, yes.
We're now finding, oh gosh, huge data around our gut biome, and that we're now seeing those who are obese are passing their gut biome to their children. So their children already don't have some of those bugs that would ordinarily break down, the fats, the carbs, the all the things. It's so complex, but it's fascinating.
Yes. Now I'm wondering, did I put that in this slide? I don't think so, but I should for in the future. Thank you for taking notes. I don't think I did. It's coming up here in the next slide or the next one. We'll see.
Okay. Which is my cue to hit the slide.
There it is. Genetics does play a role also in obesity. Studies are finding some genes or sets of genes that cause some people to have extreme hunger, high levels of ghrelin, and a lack of leptin production, or more commonly, I think, leptin resistance, where you have leptin, enough, but your receptors are just not functioning properly. And so it's not as common as we would like to say it is,
Yeah.
but, or at least that what we know right now. But this does exist for some people and does run in families. So that's also a factor. And probably gut biome would go in here really nicely.
Yeah. And leptin is relatively new discovery.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah,
we didn't
yeah.
really even know of leptin and how, there were these, particularly there's another book. It's called The Secret Life of Fat. It is a phenomenal book. And she goes through a lot of the data behind discovering leptin and this leptin resistance that they discovered in these pediatric patients that for whatever reason could not stop eating. And once leptin was discovered, they were able to go back and give these patients leptin, and
Yes.
their body just completely equalized. However, what they have found is that in people who are obese who do not truly have this particular type of leptin resistance, but they have more of like what we would call type 2 diabetes resistance, when you can have leptin resistance, kind of the same thing. Not the same thing, but the same
Concept.
concept of how it happens.
works,
There's
yeah.
what I'm looking for.
Yep.
And unfortunately, to all the drug companies' disappointment, we can't just give ourselves leptin and
Right.
it go
worked.
away.
Yeah.
But it's been a pretty cool discovery. But yes, Secret Life of Fat is a really, really good book as well, if you're interested in kind of getting into the nuances of how our body stores fat and different studies around fat, all the things. So
It's a great read.
it's a good book.
I think another one you recommended to
It's
me.
a really good book.
Pretty much just read whatever Beth tells me to read.
Okay, moving on. And I think we talked about, our genes clearly, well, I'm going to sit here and say we can't change. However, we now know epigenetics is a thing. So yes, we can change our genes. We have discovered.
We can turn them on and off.
But what
Yes.
we do is what can turn them on and off. And so although we feel like, oh, I have this thing, what we do with our lifestyle absolutely can determine whether or not that gene is expressed or not. So our genes aren't our destiny. We do have more control than we think we do.
Right. Exactly. And the last one, I think, is that contributes to obesity that we're going to talk about is illness and medications. And there are some illnesses that lead to obesity or weight gain, like Cushing's disease and polycystic ovary syndrome. And also there's some drugs, steroids, some antidepressants, and some cancer drugs. And I put Megace in parentheses here because that's what my mom was on. That caused her to gain a bunch of weight. She had cancer. It was a estrogen-driven cancer. Megace is actually a drug for people. They've used it for people with anorexia to help them, to stimulate appetite and help them gain weight. And they discovered accidentally some women who had estrogen-driven cancers, the cancers started going away when they put them on Megace. Yes, and so they started using it for estrogen-driven cancers. And my mom had an estrogen-driven cancer, and chemo did not work. She had her lifetime max. She went on Megace. They told her to go home and enjoy what was left of her life. They put her on Megace, and in 6 months, all of her cancers were gone.
Really?
Yes. But she gradually gained weight.
Yeah.
Like probably 100 pounds over the next 5 years or something.
Yeah.
Like quite a bit.
It's interesting because, and y'all, I'm not a physician that does this for a living. However, we do know that our fat cells speak to estrogen. There's a communication there, which is one reason why after menopause, women start to gain weight, because we don't have the estrogen that's communicating with the fat the way that it ordinarily does. And so our body is trying to even back out. So it's producing more fat cells so that we have that estrogen.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that these estrogen-driven cancers, that as she was gaining weight, again, just literally a thought that popped back in my head. I'm
Yeah.
like, I wonder what that connection is there between the estrogen and our fat cells.
Yep. Yeah.
Little-
Interesting.
Little
Little thing to ponder.
little thing to ponder. Yeah, just a little bit. Beth Knott thought. Not a scientific thought by any means, so don't take that and run with it.
I do know her oncologist told her that this estrogen-driven cancer, the reason that her team believed that she got it was because she was overweight.
Really?
And more body fat means more estrogen.
Yeah.
And so her body was dealing with too much estrogen for a couple of decades, and it spawned this growth of endometrial cancer. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Human body is fascinating.
And fascinating. Okay, consequences of obesity. Well, you can see a very long list here.
Yeah.
High blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, high LDL, which is what we call the bad cholesterol, or low good cholesterol, or high triglycerides. Breathing problems, sleep apnea, or asthma, gallbladder disease. There can be joint problems. Not necessarily all of these, but these are just consequences that can happen over time too. Coronary heart disease, many types of cancers, as we were just talking about, stroke, or even premature death. Screening for obesity, we use a couple of different measurements. The BMI, or body mass index. Sometimes a weight circumference also is a tool that's used to estimate the weight status in relation to potential disease risk. And we'll talk more about those on the next slide.
Okay.
I think it's in the, yeah. Okay, so here is what it is. It's a person's weight in kilograms divided by the square of height in meters, which there's actually a formula in this country's units of measure out there too, but it's generally done using kilograms and meters squared. And these are your ranges for underweight, normal, overweight, obese, and I think even obese has a couple of
ranges.
Yeah,
it does.
It goes on up. At least in my work at UNC, we had like morbidly obese and super morbidly obese.
I think there's 3 categories.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think you need to know those for the national board. These are the ones that you need to memorize and know and be able to apply them to a scenario situation.
Yeah. So it'll say Johnny, blah blah blah. His BMI was 27.
Yeah.
And, blah, blah, blah. So then you would know, okay, that's the overweight range as you were reading through that scenario.
Yeah.
And I think that, we all kind of know it's important to say these are screenings.
Yes.
Because, as we know, BMI is not, it's not at all giving us any type of body fat composition.
Right.
Which is what's important at the end of the day.
Right. And there's a lot of arguments, I guess you'd say, in the literature about even using BMI as a screening measure.
There are, which is really what kind of led to the waist circumference measurement.
Yes.
Because we do know that belly fat is the higher risk type of fat.
Right.
And so when you can kind of put the two together, again, there's screenings. And there are ways to test body fat out there. And wouldn't it be amazing if we had access?
Yeah, it's just
access to it.
Again, it's more expensive, and so
it's complicated equipment.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do a water tank.
Me too. Which is the most accurate.
We have one at UNC. I just don't know how I could get myself in. In the wellness center, they have one.
Well, if there's a bring a friend coupon,
I know. We'll go into the tank.
I'm on board. I don't know if I would want to know, but
I would want to just experience it.
Yeah, me too. I think it would be really cool.
Yeah. The waist circumference is basically take a tape measure and try to hold it as parallel to the floor as you can. And of course, not over your clothes, but under, and measure it across your navel. And you're considered at high risk for obesity if you're a man whose waist circumference is more than 40 inches and a woman whose waist is more than 35, as long as you're not a pregnant woman. Yeah. BMI versus weight circumference. Well, BMI is a little more complex to calculate. In terms of the waist measurement, that's prone to errors. It's hard to get that thing. I've done it myself, stand in the mirror, looking around, trying to get it level.
How tight are we pulling? Are you sucking in? Are you not sucking in?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
But we do know the waist measurement gives you a best estimate of visceral fat. And that's the type of fat that really is related to disease risk, chronic disease risk, or obesity risk. So that's really, in my mind, a better measurement.
Yeah. The visceral fat's really what's going to mess with our metabolic functioning. The subcutaneous fat we don't love, but it's kind of just hanging out there. It's not really, it doesn't have that communication like our visceral fat is, I mean, to some degree an organ, and that it is communicating and it is impacting the metabolic functioning of our body. And so we know that this is the fat we just don't need creeping around our organs.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah, literally.
And literally squishing them to where they can't function as well because there's just not even enough space.
And then it starts to embed the organs, and so.
And the visceral fat is hard. It's hard fat. It's not.
It's not like.
It's not like what's on the bottom here. You know, like.
Yeah. It is. When I was getting my master's degree, we had the opportunity to go to the dental school at UNC and look at the cadavers. And so we were able to see someone who had passed away from cirrhosis, and the liver was, oh my gosh, like 4 times bigger than a typical liver. However, we were able to see the visceral fat and how it had penetrated around all of the organs. It was fascinating to see, and just to see the texture of it. And it was real. It's eye-opening. It's like, wow, yes, this is really everywhere inside of our body, not just what you think of, but just kind of hanging out. It's really cool.
I'm going to tell a weird personal story.
Okay.
When I started working at UNC in the research office for nutrition and epidemiology, I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I did not know that like white table sugar was bad for us before I went to work there. I had no idea. And I got put on a sugar study. So I was the programmer on this sugar study, and I was seeing the results. I'm like, oh my God, sugar's like killing us.
This is like a big deal.
It's a big deal, yeah, you know. I'm like, that cheerwine in my bottle was probably not a good idea. Yeah, but anyway, so I decided that I was going to go off added sugar, just have none. And so I did. And I ended up going for almost a year with like none, from birthday to birthday, because, you know, birthday cake. And I literally thought that I had like this muscle going through here, you know. It disappeared in that year. And I thought it was a muscle because it was so hard. I was like, I've got like this weird muscle thing that's across my belly here. And it disappeared. And I mean, I still have belly fat, but it's squishy belly. It's squishy belly fat now. It was visceral fat.
Wow.
And it went away when I quit sugar. And I had no idea, because I've always been considered thin or normal weight range. And so I had no idea I was carrying around this middle body visceral fat.
Wow.
Until, getting the job at UNC probably saved me some years on my life.
There we go.
Yeah, anyway, weird personal story. Okay, moving on to cholesterol.
Moving on.
Sorry, you'd already moved on, hey.
No. I got all day.
Cholesterol. Well, let's just start with what is it? Cholesterol is this waxy kind of fat-like substance. It's made by our liver, and we make all we need. We don't have to consume it at all. We can consume it, and it's okay if we do. But our liver can make all we need. On average, though, in the U.S., I think the 85% of it is made by our liver, and we consume the other 15%. And I want to say, for starters, cholesterol is good. We say when we hear the word, we just think of it as bad, but it's essential. We need it to live. It is good. And what cholesterol actually does is it makes cell membranes. It helps make nerves, hormones, vitamin D, and it helps us maybe most importantly, to digest the fatty foods that we eat. So we need cholesterol. Yeah. There are different types, and so let's talk about them. LDL, low density lipoprotein, which is really just the words fat and protein jammed together. They're known as the bad cholesterol. But I don't know why. I like to not think of either of them as bad.
Right.
That bothers me a little bit.
No,
but I did put it on here because that's what people call the bad.
You do see it in the literature. Yeah.
Yes.
But I do think the literature is changing.
Yes, finally.
Yes.
It's catching up with the research. Yes, because we now know. LDL actually carries cholesterol out to the cells. So all those things that we need to create and have in our bodies, the LDL is doing that. It's carrying the cholesterol out. The HDL, known as the good, its job is like a little garbage truck. So if there's too much LDL that's out there, HDL runs out, grabs it, grabs hold of it and carries it back to the liver so that we don't have too much cholesterol out there. That's why your doctors are always talking about the balance between LDL and HDL sort of thing, because you definitely, you don't want as much HDL as LDL, because you need LDL to do its job, but you need enough HDL to go out there and do the cleanup work. So those are the two different types. We also have the triglycerides that gets measured in a cholesterol panel. And that really is just the fat that we find in our blood that we use for energy. And this is, I think of triglycerides as being pretty volatile. If you go out and eat a big old ribeye and eat all the fat on the ribeye, your triglycerides are going to shoot up for a little while and then settle back down. But anyway, so triglycerides are the fats floating around in your blood.
Yeah. Which can, if you consume too much sugar, they end up as triglycerides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
too much sugar, or even too much just calories.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all going to get converted to the liver by, triglycerides or 3 glycerides all crammed in together, which is typically from excess glucose.
Yep. Anything, I'm glad you pointed that out. Maybe we should add that in here. Anything that's excess.
Yes, will get converted to triglycerides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good number to keep an eye on in your.
Yes, for sure. And particularly with your LDLs, there's even different, what's next? Okay. There's even different, you have big fluffy LDLs or you have little tiny LDLs. And so sometimes you can even have an LDL that's a little bit elevated, but if they're all big and fluffy, they're never going to connect to anything, get up, cause those clots. So some physicians are getting better about ordering a particle size test, which tells you, what is my LDL? Is it big and fluffy or is it really tiny? The really tiny is the kind that is going to kill us.
Yep.
Big and fluffy is just kind of floating around, living life. So I think we are getting smarter in how we're looking at our LDL, and we are now looking more at the ratio than just standard numbers as well.
And what I was reading is both LDL and HDL have the big and fluffy, or the high density versus the small density, or the low density, or the very low density.
Yes.
Those are the VLDLs
are the ones.
They're the evil ones.
The ones we have to be worried.
Those are the ones we really should call bad.
Yeah.
And they exist within both, we now know. Yeah.
So again, it's fascinating.
Yeah, so
we don't have to know all that.
We don't have to know it, but it's very interesting.
Ray and our nerds, we like to we like to nerd out on this stuff.
Right, exactly. And these are the optimal cholesterol values in general. 150 total cholesterol, 100 LDLs or less. I guess I should put that in there. HDLs equal to or greater than 40 for men, 50 for women. Higher, if you can get higher, that's even better. And those triglycerides under 150.
And these numbers.
Yes, definitely know these numbers for the exam. And there is this odd inherited condition of a really high LDL at a young age, and I'll let Beth pronounce that word.
Familial hypercholesterolemia.
Yes, very good, very good. You did it.
We did it. That would be that 16% genetic thing.
Right.
That, again, we can control how much it impacts us because our lifestyle matters. And this is just one of those things where there's just a predisposition there, and it stinks.
Yeah.
However, we can't ignore it and know, hey, I've got this thing. I need to be extra cautious and really pay attention to where my cholesterol is.
Yeah, I have it in my family.
Oh, yeah.
I have never had a total cholesterol reading under 200.
Oh, really?
By the time I was 16, it was like 210 already.
Oh, wow. Yeah. My sister's husband, same thing in his family.
Yeah. But I'm glad I know about particle tests and all of that, because overall my cholesterol is fine. If by the old standards, I would have been on medication at 18 years old.
Right. But you got a lot of big fluffies.
I got big fluffies.
Life is good.
I plan on keeping them that way. Yes. High cholesterol symptoms. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's not really any symptoms, so you don't really know you have it. So you definitely need to make sure you're getting these tested. Or I say this like we're talking as health coaches.
Yeah.
We really, I guess, want to encourage and support our clients for their annual exams.
Right.
There is, go ahead and hit the thing. I think, yeah, at the worst stages, people will begin to feel chest pain, but that's down the road.
Yeah.
At that point, there's probably a big problem.
Right.
Yeah. What can cause cholesterol to be out of range? Of course, diet that's high in saturated fats or trans fats, physical inactivity. Type 2 diabetes can cause it, obesity, or it can be inherited. And also it increases with age, and it is more prevalent for women to have out of range cholesterol.
Yeah. Of course it is.
Of course.
We do all the things.
I wonder though, I do wonder when they say that, is that because they're saying if that's still from the old standards and not really been updated in terms of for women, like if we really did have particle tests on everyone, is that still true? Because I think that's...
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
But again, we do know estrogen is highly linked to cardiovascular disease, and that once we are postmenopausal.
Yeah.
So I believe women are it's less prevalent in premenopausal women.
Gotcha.
And then as we become postmenopausal, it flips.
Okay.
Because estrogen is so highly linked to our heart health.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That it's somehow playing a role
Yeah.
in, I don't know the biochemistry behind it. I would love to. I'll keep you all posted.
I was going to say,
about
by next week she'll know.
the things you research as you age, right?
Oh, yeah. It changes over the
It does.
You can look at my bookshelf and tell how old I am.
Exactly. The evolution of a health coach.
Right, exactly. And as she ages. The consequences of poor cholesterol is, I think, maybe the most, like the plaque buildup is the scary one because it leads to all sorts of bad things in the future. This narrows the arteries and blocks blood flow to and from the heart and the organs, and that increases your risk of heart disease. It increases your risk of stroke and heart attack. So very serious consequences. And how to improve it? Of course. Move more, eat healthy. If you're smoking, quit it. And if you need medication, then take it.
Yeah.
Okay, next health issue. Let's talk about blood pressure. Blood pressure literally is the pressure of blood pushing against the walls of your arteries as the heart beats and rests. And if I were to stand up, all of a sudden right now, my blood pressure would shoot up. Or if I were to lean over and put my head down below my heart, my blood pressure would shoot up. This is why in silver sneakers, they don't have people doing exercises with their head down, and bending over. Don't want the blood pressure to go up because it goes up with age anyway. So blood pressure, you'll see two numbers. The top number is called the systolic number. The bottom number is the diastolic number. And the top number is when your heart actually squeezes, when it beats. So it's the pressure, and that's why it's a higher number, because there's going to be more pressure when your heart actually beats. And then the bottom number, which I think of as the more important number if I had to pick between the two, that's the pressure when your heart is at rest. And the reason I say that feels more important to me is when your heart is at rest, if you've still got a lot of pressure going on,
Right.
yeah,
It's working hard.
it's working hard and maybe
Yeah.
chronically hard.
Right.
And that's a problem. But I mean, both numbers are important.
Yeah, they're both important. To kind of help me remember it, I always think of the D, diastolic, is down.
Oh,
So that's my little, the D stands for down.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, the number that's on
D is down.
down low.
It's on the down low.
Oh, yeah.
God, you're good. I'll forever remember that.
Yes, but know these numbers.
It's almost like you're a teacher or something. I mean, an instructor of health and wellness. Risk factors for high blood pressure, of course, poor diet, physical inactivity, diabetes, obesity, alcohol use, tobacco use. Maybe a genetic link also, age as we get older, women, of course, again, higher risk, and some ethnicities. African American is more apt to have high blood pressure than Caucasian, and also to have it earlier in their lives. So those are the risk factors for high blood pressure. Consequences, it decreases the elasticity of your arteries, which decreases the flow of blood and oxygen to the heart. It can also damage your organs over time, your heart, your brain, your kidneys, your eyes. This can also lead to heart attack, heart disease, stroke, cognitive decline, kidney disease, and vision problems. So any of those organs that get damaged leads to worse problems.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
If our blood isn't flowing properly, we're not getting fed the nutrients properly.
Yeah.
And so our bodies just can't work when the blood can't do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So pretty much everything's a consequence.
Everything's a consequence, yes. And here are your levels. These are the 2017 guidelines. Was it the 2003 we also, was it before that? I can't remember. Anyway, these are the 2017 ones. Normal is anything less than 120 over anything less than 80. Okay, and these are different than the ones before, so make sure that you're aware of these new ones. Elevated now is anything in the 120s, but still over anything less than 80. Hypertension or high blood pressure is considered anything in the 130s over 80s and up, but they stage it into two stages. So you've got stage 1, 130s over 80s, and stage 2 is 140 over 90, anything greater than those. And I'm gonna let Beth pronounce this as well. It's tested with what I like to call a blood pressure monitor or a cuff.
That's what I go with too.
But the actual, okay, just thought it'd be fun to throw that in there.
Manometer.
Yeah, I think you did it. I tried my best to pronounce that yesterday. I'm like, forget it, I'm not gonna pronounce it.
Yeah, we're going blood pressure cuff, guys.
There you go.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, know these. These will be in scenarios as well. So on the exam, know these levels.
Yes, know these levels and know the stage 1 and stage 2. We were actually tested on both. I think it may not be a bad idea to just brush up on the earlier ones, but have they said they've already switched to
I was thinking they
list?
were switching to these
I
and
think
dropping the questions on the old ones.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's why I only included these.
Okay.
But it wouldn't hurt to know the others.
Yeah.
The
These are just more specific.
yeah.
And they've just added the elevated, right?
Right.
Not the,
Elevated was not a thing before. Signs and symptoms of high blood pressure? None.
None.
That's why we call this, what's it called?
The silent killer.
Yeah, you got it. That's right. The silent killer. So people need to keep a measure on this themselves at home if you can. Definitely when you go to the doctor. And just because you get one reading that's high, I don't think you have high blood pressure. This is kind of it needs to stay kind of high before you would be considered elevated or in the stages of high blood pressure. There's all sorts of reasons why your blood pressure can shoot up. Some is just I'm nervous from being at the doctor's office.
I was going to say white coat syndrome is a real thing.
Yeah.
It is. And so I know that some clients of mine who have high blood pressure, we kind of talk through that because their blood pressure measurement matters when they go. That's what they use to put in their chart of where their biometrics stand. And sometimes it's even helpful to just go ahead and get an at-home cup or, however you want to measure throughout the day. Here in Randolph County, they have monitors in all of the main buildings. So at any time you can go in and just test your blood pressure on your own.
Wow,
just
that's
so
nice.
you can keep an eye on it. Yes, because it is the silent killer.
Yeah.
And so it's helpful to know. And then when you can have an average, and it's been interesting because I have worked with, I work with the sheriff's office some, and so I had an officer, and we were able to put trends together. That, he was able, what I know, he was search and rescue. So I know when we get called out on a hike, my blood pressure is going to be elevated for a certain time period once he gets home.
Yeah.
So we were able to really start putting some trends together. However, there were a lot of discussions around how often are you testing? You know, that was one of our behavior steps of just implementing, let me just regularly check my blood pressure, because that was not happening.
Yeah.
And that was one of our action steps of I'm going to check my blood pressure every day, first thing in the morning, and then at lunch, and then in the evening. And then we were able to start to see the issues, because he was seeing me for high blood pressure. I mean, that was what was going on. So it is very important to test, and it's very insightful to test. And once he was able to see it in real time, he began taking his medication every day, because his was well above 140. So it was enlightening for him to just see that number every day and see the consistency of it. And then once he was regularly taking his medication, to see how it was where it needed to be. Yeah. So anyway, it's a little sad story.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
So it's important to test.
You know, like after I get home from a search, I can't sleep that night. I am so jacked up. I wonder if mine is elevated during.
Maybe it'd be interesting, because it was definitely a trend that he would pick up on, and so he would start. You know, he's like, okay, I know not to schedule any doctor's appointments.
Oh yeah.
Following, because that it's going to be elevated from where I want to be. And I don't know about you, but I certainly have found, for whatever reason, high blood pressure medicine is the one people don't want to take. And again, my theory, I think it's because there's no symptoms.
Yeah, and they're like, I don't feel bad. Why would I take this medicine?
Right. So they don't feel like they need it. Yeah. And this is the one that I have had a lot of conversations around, that for whatever reason, and most of the people I work with are younger. You know, so it's not like they're in the pillbox mode of just, here's all my things I take every day. And it's just one that the compliance is a big thing with high blood pressure meds. It's just personally what I have seen.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Like, if I don't want to take something, if I don't feel bad or feel like I need anything.
Right. Yeah. Which is where monitoring can be very enlightening.
Yeah,
and that's all it took with this guy.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, let's just pay attention. Let's just see what it looks like. And that was, you know, again, knowledge is power.
Right. Yeah.
You just have to, you know, when we know better, we do better.
Yep, that's right.
It is. So.
Controlling it. Measure.
Hey, look at that. We just teed that up perfectly.
It's almost as if you knew what was going to be on this.
I know. I'd like to say that I had remembered that was next, but.
I know, right? Other lifestyle, of course, physical activity, improve your diet. The DASH diet is specifically created for improving blood pressure, stress management, sleep quality, become tobacco-free if you're not already. Stop or better manage your alcohol intake, manage sodium. If you have diabetes, make sure you're managing that. And if you're on medication, take it as prescribed. Yeah. I was struggling with that word. I was getting ready to say described. I'm like, that's not right.
That doesn't sound right.
Thank you for finishing my sentence.
Hey, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We make a good team.
We do.
All right, guys. So we will stop here.
That's the end of part one of chronic diseases.
Part one.
Yes.
So we'll let you go take a breather and a little break, and then we will come back, and I think we're going to start with diabetes.
I think we are.
All right. We will see you back soon.
All right.